which makes Jesse's story so peculiar and so troubling regarding what we now know to be fact. Jesse's one of those unsung, invisible heroes who works in the dead of the night that makes our lives better. As he said, he has nothing to gain here, but everything to lose. And that's why it's important that we listen to him. So the first question we should all ask is, where's Jesse's trailer? Where is it? Where'd it go? What was the route it took after it left? I think it's a reasonable question, one that I think any reasonable American who's curious about 24 pallets of ballots, where they went. So we have a number of teams supporting the Armistead effort. One of them is my own London Center Intelligence team. They did the estimate of ballots. So just so you all understand what we're talking about, depending on the density, depending on the trays, and again, this leads back to Greg's story, seeing these ballots showing up in the counting rooms in the middle of the night. That's the pointing into the Spirit. We trace it back through all the different machinations to Jesse, to his mass transportation of these things. And I can tell you, other investigations that are now ongoing with our field elements are developing the next set of leads. It doesn't stop at Bethpage. It only begins there. And as Phil said, all investigations start with questions. We have additional questions we're now going to answer. But to the point of this, 24 gaylords full of these things, not nailed like they normally would be. And let me make this very clear. The Bethpage Center is not a place where you can frank or process mail. It's a bulk mail center. As a matter of fact, it's called a process and distribution center. That means big boxes and big things go through. You don't take in envelopes. You don't take in little pieces of mail and put them into big bundles. These things were bundled. They were on trays. They were processed. They were curated, if you will. These were ready to be counted. That's what makes this so important. So depending on the density of these things, it could be 144 to over to 250,000 ballots. Let me tell you a little secret. Part of our developing investigation indicates that Jesse wasn't alone. It was a number, as in like a bunch of different trucks, which engaged in this. So when you think about the magnitude of potential votes showing up the night of the election after midnight, you have to have an artifact. So if you eliminate the impossible, with all things being equal, whatever remains must be the truth. The truth is, ballots showed up. They were counted. They do not match necessarily the records of who should have voted. In some instances, the stats don't add up. And we continue to analyze that. With that said, I believe, beyond a shadow of a doubt, we have evidence of a massive transfer of completed, curated ballots ready to be injected into counting centers.
Mach dein Leben ideal und verpasse mit dem Preiswecker nie wieder Angebote, die nicht von dieser Welt sind.
Voce Viva, the new fragrance, Valentino.
Weeks out from the US presidential election, Americans have been handed a political grenade as details emerge of how the son of presidential hopeful Joe Biden may have used his father's position in the White House to amass wealth and power while working at a corrupt Ukrainian energy company, Burisma. Hunter Biden stands accused of using his influence in the Obama administration to interfere in the execution of policy and using his connection to the White House for personal and financial gain. The allegations are detailed in an 87-page Senate report probing the Bidens, which warns the family's financial transactions with Ukrainian, Russian, and Chinese nationals raises criminal concerns and risks of extortion threats. And Joe Biden Well, he stands accused of leveraging $1 billion in foreign aid to get the Ukrainian prosecutor investigating his son's company fired. This special investigation will walk you through the report in detail and break down how the world's biggest tech billionaires wanted to bury the story on their social media platforms in the lead up to the US election. But first, what is the report and who published it? Well, the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs published a report titled Hunter Biden, Burisma, and Corruption, the Impact on US Government Policy and Related Concerns. The document examines possible conflicts of interest in foreign business while Joe Biden was Vice President in Barack Obama's administration. They discovered the Obama administration knew Hunter Biden's presence on the board of the corrupt Ukrainian energy company, Burisma, was, quote, problematic and, quote, interfered in the execution of policy with Ukraine. And the investigations illustrated the extent to which officials within the Obama administration ignored the glaring warning signs when the vice president's son joined the board of a company owned by a corrupt Ukrainian oligarch. Now, Joe Biden was able to escape scrutiny of these allegations by denying any wrongdoing for a very long time.
Mr. Vice President, how many times have you ever spoken to your son about his overseas business dealings?
I've never spoken to my son about overseas business.
And so how do you know?
Here's what I know. I know Trump deserves to be investigated.
But that was until the New York Post stumbled across a missing laptop, which dragged the presidential candidate directly into the grips of a corruption scandal. In one email, an advisor to the board of Burisma thanked Hunter Biden for creating the opportunity to meet the then vice president. Emails showed how Hunter Biden sought to use his father's influence to create business ties in China, a claim Biden had previously denied.
What are your response to the New York Post story about your top firm?
I know you asked it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign. Right up your alley. There's a question you want to ask.
The allegations are extraordinary. So much so that social media giants Facebook and Twitter sought to censor the story to stop it reaching voters in a manner akin to brazen election interference.
The media and the big tech are desperately trying to cover up this massive scandal. I'm not just running against Sleepy Joe Biden. I'm running against the corrupt media. They're corrupt. The corrupt media, the big tech giants, and I'm running against the Washington swamp. It's time to send a message to these wealthy liberal hypocrites by delivering Joe Biden a thundering defeat on November 3rd.
Everything that's going on here about Russia is wanting to make sure that I do not get elected the next president of the United States because they know I know them and they know me. I don't understand why this president is unwilling to take on Putin when he's actually paying bounties to kill American soldiers in Afghanistan, when he's engaged in activities that are trying to destabilize all of NATO. I don't know why he doesn't do it, but it's worth asking the question, why isn't that being done? Any country that interferes with us will, in fact, pay a price because they're affecting our sovereignty.
So how did we get here? A fresh corruption scandal and allegations of election interference weeks out from the 2020 US election. To explore the tale of Hunter Biden's pursuit for wealth and power, we have to start in Eastern Europe, more than 6 years ago. Welcome to Kiev, the capital city of Ukraine, a city embroiled in a series of bloody mass protests which would boil over to a full-blown revolution. The revolution of dignity. In late February 2014, the country's parliament voted to oust its pro-Russian president in the Ukrainian revolution after his forces unleashed gunfire, killing dozens of protesters after months-long protests in the city. Those protesters were demanding integration into Western economies and an end to systemic corruption. The president fled to Russia in the wake of the bloodbath, and the Kremlin annexed Crimea. And Ukrainian billionaire and former foreign minister Petro Poroshenko was elected president. He promised to break away from Russia corruption, and 2 months later, Hunter Biden enters the story. The modern-day Senate investigation discovered Burisma sent 2 wires worth more than $112,000 to Rosemont Senecare Vahai, a shell entity run by Hunter Biden's business associate, Devon Archer.
Yeah, now the convicted felon that, yes, his business partner.
The investigation found, quote, The earliest payment from Burisma related to Hunter Biden appears to have been made to a Washington law firm where the vice president's son was employed as a counsel in 2014. On May 7, 2014, just weeks after Vice President Biden took lead of the Obama administration's Ukraine policy, Burisma sent the Washington law firm a payment of $250,000. 1 week later, on May 12, 2014, Hunter Biden joined Archer on Burisma's board of directors. Over the next course of several years, Hunter Biden and Devon Archer were paid millions of dollars from a corrupt Ukrainian oligarch for their participation on the board. Hunter Biden himself was personally paid between $50,000 and $83,000 each month to serve on the board of Burisma, while his father was the public face of Obama's administration's Ukraine policy. This was a gig Hunter appeared to be seriously qualified for.
True or false, Hunter went on GMA and said he had no experience in oil, gas, energy, or Ukraine. True, that's true, correct?
That is correct, yep.
The Senate report also found that Ukrainian political figures were desperate for US support. It said Burisma would have made sure relevant Ukrainian officials were well aware of Hunter's appointment to Burisma's board as leverage. And Hunter Biden's position on the board created an immediate potential conflict of interest that would prove to be problematic for both US and Ukrainian officials and would affect the implementation of Ukraine policy. Hunter Biden may have been weaponized by Ukraine to influence his father's decisions as vice president on behalf of Burisma, or perhaps he sought to benefit financially from his father-son relationship.
Hunter Biden, together with other Biden family members, profited off the Biden name. And that's what's happening here. And what we revealed in our 87-page report is a vast web of connections with Chinese nationals, with people all over the world. Again, trading on the Biden name, but it's these business dealings. Our report raises far more questions than it actually answered, but it raises so many troubling issues that the mainstream media is simply not looking at. They're suppressing the information, which is a scandal in and of itself.
This is the same garbage Rudy Giuliani, Trump's henchman. It's the last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family, and the vast majority of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all.
By 2015, two bureaucrats raised concerns about Hunter Biden's job with Burisma.